Emma Matthews pressed her fingertips against the piano keys in her empty classroom at Thornfield Primary School, letting the melody of Claire de Lune wash over the afternoon silence while autumn rain drummed against the tall windows. At 36, she had built a careful life, teaching music to children whose laughter filled her days with borrowed joy. Yet every evening she returned to her cottage feeling like an actress who had performed beautifully but forgot to live her own story. The melody under her fingers faltered as she thought about the parent-teacher conferences starting next week, another parade of families she would observe from the outside looking in. She had stopped dating 2 years ago after her last relationship ended, with the familiar refrain that she seemed emotionally distant, always holding something back, though she couldn't explain why her heart felt locked behind glass, even when she desperately wanted to let someone in. Her students often asked why she never wore a wedding ring, and Emma would deflect with gentle smiles, never admitting that she still wore the small silver ring her childhood best friend had given her at age 8, promising they would find each other again someday. She touched it now, hidden on a chain beneath her blouse, wondering why she couldn't let go of a memory from 20 years ago when life had felt infinite and love had seemed as simple as sharing sweets behind the school building. The rain intensified, creating a symphony against the glass that made her think of all the concerts where she sat alone in darkened halls, surrounded by couples who reached for each other's hands during the most beautiful passages. Tomorrow would bring new students, new families, new reminders of the life she watched but never quite joined. Yet something in the air tonight felt different, charged with the electricity that comes before lightning strikes, making her heart race with the inexplicable certainty that everything was about to change. The next morning arrived with unusual brightness, as if the autumn sun had decided to spotlight Thornfield Primary's entrance hall, where Emma stood arranging sheet music for the parent-teacher conferences, her fingers trembling slightly with the same inexplicable anticipation that had kept her awake since yesterday evening. She had chosen her burgundy dress carefully, though she couldn't explain why today felt different from the hundreds of other conferences she had conducted, why she found herself checking her reflection in the glass display case and touching the silver chain beneath her collar more frequently than usual. The first parents filtered through the corridors with their nervous energy and forced smiles, and Emma greeted each family with practiced warmth, while her heart maintained an irregular rhythm that seemed to be waiting for something specific. When Lily Harrison's appointment time approached, Emma felt her pulse quicken inexplicably, as if her body knew something her mind hadn't yet processed, and she found herself straightening papers that were already perfectly aligned, while glancing toward the doorway with growing intensity. The footsteps that echoed down the hallway were confident, yet hesitant, and when the tall figure appeared in her classroom doorway, Emma's world tilted on an axis she thought had been permanently fixed 20 years ago. Time collapsed into a single heartbeat as she looked into eyes that were exactly the same shade of green she had memorized during countless childhood afternoons, eyes that belonged to a face that had grown from the boy who had given her the ring she still wore, into a man whose presence filled the room with the same magnetic energy that had once made her believe in forever. "Thomas," she whispered, the name escaping before she could stop it, and watched recognition dawn across features that were unmistakably him, despite the years that had carved new lines around those familiar eyes. He stood, frozen in the doorway, his hand still reaching for the handle, and Emma saw the exact moment when his carefully composed parental expression cracked to reveal the same wonder she felt coursing through her own veins. The same expression he had worn when he promised her at age 8 that they would find each other again someday. "Emma Matthews," he said softly, and her maiden name had never sounded like music until this moment, spoken in a voice that was deeper now but carried the same gentle cadence that had once sung silly songs with her behind the school building, making her realize with stunning clarity that some promises transcend time, waiting patiently in silver rings and beating hearts until the universe decides their moment has finally arrived. She noticed he still wore the small scar above his left eyebrow from when they had fallen together from the old oak tree, and something about seeing that familiar mark made her chest tighten with the overwhelming certainty that this wasn't just coincidence. The parent-teacher conference had officially ended an hour ago, but Emma found herself walking beside Thomas through Thornfield's empty corridors, discussing Lily's remarkable musical intuition, while her heart hammered against her ribs with the overwhelming certainty that this conversation was the most important of her adult life. He spoke about his daughter with such tender pride that Emma felt something crack open inside her chest. A protective wall she had built around her heart dissolving as she watched him describe how Lily hummed Mozart while brushing her teeth, how she conducted invisible orchestras during breakfast, how music seemed to flow through her like water through a riverbed, exactly the way Emma remembered feeling as a child, before life taught her to be careful with dreams. Can you feel Emma's walls beginning to crumble? There's something about moments like this that just captivates us, isn't it? If you love watching Hearts Open Up, follow Sparks Fly Stories for more tales that will make your heart skip a beat. Now, shall we continue our story? "She gets that from her mother," Thomas said quietly, and Emma noticed how his voice caught slightly on the word mother, revealing a wound that time hadn't quite healed, making her want to reach out and touch his arm in comfort, though they had only just rediscovered each other after 20 years of silence. They paused by the music room windows where afternoon light streamed across the piano keys, and Emma found herself sharing things she never told anyone. How she sometimes played late into the evening for an audience of empty chairs, how she collected vintage sheet music because each piece felt like a conversation with composers who understood loneliness, how she had always believed that music was the closest thing to magic that existed in the ordinary world. "You still do that thing with your hands when you talk about music," Thomas observed with a gentle smile that made her cheeks warm. And when she looked down, she realized she had been unconsciously conducting their conversation, her fingers tracing melodies in the air exactly the way she had done as a child when they would sit behind the school building, sharing dreams that felt possible then. The recognition in his eyes was so tender it made her breath catch, and she was about to respond when she noticed something that made her world tilt. He was carrying a worn leather folder with H Music Academy 1999 embossed on the cover. The same private music school her parents had desperately wanted to send her to but couldn't afford. The scholarship opportunity she had lost when her family moved away suddenly that summer. And seeing those familiar letters made her wonder with growing unease if their reunion Was the beautiful accident it seemed to be, or something far more complicated? "My daughter's audition portfolio," he explained when he caught her staring. But something in the way he held the folder, protective and almost secretive, made Emma's chest tighten with the unsettling realization that 20 years of separation might have hidden more than just time between them, and that the little girl who shared her love of music might be connected to her own past in ways that would change everything she thought she understood about this miraculous second chance. Emma discovered that falling back into love with Thomas was the easy part, but navigating the complicated reality of their reunion proved far more challenging than her heart had anticipated during those magical first conversations in the empty corridors of Thornfield Primary. The whispers started almost immediately among the other teachers, subtle glances and knowing smiles that made her cheeks burn whenever she passed the staff room, because everyone seemed to understand something she was still trying to process about the appropriateness of a teacher becoming emotionally involved with a parent, especially one whose daughter possessed the same remarkable musical intuition that Emma had always felt made her different from other children. Her headmistress, Mrs. Whitmore, called her into the office on Friday afternoon with the kind of concerned expression that made Emma's stomach clench with dread, explaining in carefully measured tones that while personal relationships weren't explicitly forbidden, they needed to be handled with utmost discretion to maintain professional boundaries and avoid any appearance of favoritism towards students whose parents might be romantically involved with faculty members. The conversation left Emma feeling torn between the overwhelming joy she felt whenever Thomas smiled at her and the crushing weight of responsibility she carried as Lily's teacher, making her question whether pursuing this connection was worth risking the career she had built so carefully over the years, especially when music was the only constant in her life that had never abandoned her. That evening, as Emma sat alone in her cottage, reviewing Lily's remarkable compositions for the upcoming school concert, she noticed something that made her breath catch in her throat. The child's handwriting was almost identical to her own at that age, complete with the distinctive way she formed her musical notes and the peculiar flourish on her signature. Details so specific they seemed impossible to be coincidental. The realization struck her with terrifying clarity that Thomas hadn't just returned to complicate her heart, but that everything about this reunion might be connected to mysteries from her past that she had never fully understood, forcing her to choose between the love she had waited 20 years to reclaim and the professional integrity that kept her world stable and secure. Emma's world shattered on a gray Friday morning when Thomas appeared at her classroom door with Lily's withdrawal forms clutched in his trembling hands. His green eyes filled with a pain so raw it made her own chest constrict with the terrible certainty that everything beautiful they had built together was about to crumble into irreparable pieces. He explained in broken sentences that his ex-wife Sarah had returned from America with lawyers and custody papers, threatening to take Lily away permanently if he continued this inappropriate relationship with her teacher. And Emma watched helplessly as the man who had made her believe in forever love again was forced to choose between his daughter's future and the connection that had awakened her heart after 20 years of careful solitude. The conversation lasted only minutes, but each word felt like a physical blow as Thomas told her that Sarah had done extensive research into their relationship, painting it as unprofessional and potentially damaging to Lily's educational experience, using Emma's position as leverage to force him into an impossible corner where loving Emma meant risking everything that mattered most in his world. Emma found herself nodding numbly as he explained that they had to end things immediately, that he couldn't bear to put Lily through a custody battle where Emma would inevitably be dragged through legal mud, her reputation destroyed and her career ruined, because Sarah's lawyers were already prepared to argue that their romance had created an inappropriate dynamic that compromised Lily's educational environment. Your heart is probably breaking for Emma right now, just like ours is. When true love faces impossible choices, the pain feels so real, doesn't it? If this story is touching your soul, show some love with a like and let us know you're feeling every emotion with Emma. Now, shall we continue our story? That evening, Emma sat alone in her cottage, surrounded by the compositions Lily had written. Each piece of music now feeling like a cruel reminder of the family she had almost become part of. And as she traced the child's familiar handwriting with her fingertips, she realized with heartbreaking clarity that losing Thomas meant losing Lily too, the little girl whose musical soul had reminded Emma of her own childhood dreams before life taught her to be careful with hope. She pulled out the silver ring she had worn for 20 years, studying those mysterious initials, L.M.H., that had seemed like such an impossible coincidence, and wondered with growing desperation if the universe had orchestrated this entire reunion just to show her what true love felt like before ripping it away forever, leaving her more alone than she had ever been, because now she knew exactly what she was missing. The rain against her windows sounded like the same symphony that had played the night before Thomas walked back into her life. But now, each drop felt like a tear the sky was crying for all the love stories that never got their happy endings. And Emma found herself whispering into the darkness that if fate had truly brought them together after 20 years, surely it wouldn't be cruel enough to tear them apart again just when they had found their way home to each other. Emma spent 3 sleepless nights staring at the ceiling of her cottage, replaying every moment with Thomas, until a sudden realization struck her like lightning at dawn on Monday morning. She had never asked him why he had chosen Thornfield Primary specifically for Lily's education, when there were at least 5 other schools closer to his home address. And the question burned through her mind with such urgency that she found herself driving to the school records office before classes began, hands trembling as she requested Lily's enrollment application, with a desperate need to understand something that felt crucial to everything they had shared. The secretary handed her the file with professional courtesy, and Emma's world shifted on its axis when she saw Thomas's handwriting in the section asking why he had chosen Thornfield Primary. Because this school has the most extraordinary music teacher who inspired me 20 years ago, and I believe she can inspire my daughter in the same way, helping Lily discover the magic of music the way Emma Matthews once helped me discover the magic of believing in forever. The words blurred through her tears as she realized that Thomas hadn't stumbled back into her life by accident, that every coincidence she had questioned was actually the result of a man who had spent 20 years remembering a promise made by 2 children behind a school building searching for a music teacher named Emma Matthews until he found her. Her phone buzzed with a text message that made her heart stop completely. Emma, I know Sarah's lawyers made everything impossible, but I need you to know that finding you again wasn't luck. It was the only plan I ever had that mattered. And if you're willing to fight for what we have, meet me at the old oak tree behind Millfield Elementary at sunset, because some promises are worth keeping even when the whole world says they're impossible. Emma stood beneath the old oak tree behind Millfield Elementary as the sun painted the English countryside in shades of gold and amber, her fingers intertwined with Thomas's as they watched Lily chase butterflies through the meadow where two 8-year-olds had once promised to find each other again, and she marveled at how the universe had kept that promise with such perfect timing that it felt like watching a symphony composed by fate itself. The custody battle with Sarah had ended 3 months ago, when Thomas's ex-wife realized that fighting against a love story 20 years in the making was like trying to stop the tide, and Emma touched the silver ring that now hung openly on her finger, no longer hidden, but gleaming as a testament to promises that transcend time, distance, and the ordinary logic of how hearts are supposed to find each other. "Do you think we would have found each other anyway?" Thomas asked softly, his thumb tracing circles against her palm, the same way he had done as a child when they had sat in this very spot, sharing impossible dreams. And Emma smiled because she knew with absolute certainty that some connections are written into the fabric of the universe itself, surviving every attempt at separation until the moment arrives for two souls to remember they were always meant to be one. Their wedding would be in spring, with Lily as flower girl and Mrs. Whitmore as an honored guest, who had learned that the most beautiful love stories sometimes begin in the most unexpected classrooms. And Emma realized that her life had become proof that when love is true enough, patient enough, and brave enough, it doesn't just find a way back. It orchestrates miracles that make even the most skeptical hearts believe in destiny. Sometimes the universe writes love stories so perfect, they take 20 years to unfold exactly as they were meant to be. Emma and Thomas found their way back to each other because some promises are stronger than time itself. If this story reminded you that true love always finds a way, smash that like button and subscribe to Sparks Fly Stories. We have countless more tales of hearts that refuse to give up on their perfect match. Which love story should we tell you next?